sometimes people will just come up and say, Tim, we've heard about Roth conversions, but how much can we actually save in taxes if we implement them during our retirement? That's what we're going to answer today. I'm going to show you the two different types of software that we use when we're determining whether or not people want to do Roth conversions or if it would be advantageous, and maybe give them a ballpark of how much they might be able to save over their lifetime. And of course, as you can probably imagine, it's a little bit different for everybody. Everybody has different assets, different ages, you start doing different things, different incomes. So there's lots of different variables that are going to go into it all. But today I'm going to show you our high-level software that kind of shows us over 20, 30 year retirement, what we might expect. And then I'm going to show you like our down in the weeds software that we use every single year to make sure that we're threading the needle on the appropriate amount of Roth conversions and maybe bumping up, filling up brackets or IRMAA or Medicare thresholds, but we're not bumping over them. So that's what we're going to go into today. So back to the original question. How much can you save in lifetime tax liability by using Roth conversions? Well, what we typically see is if you have a few $100,000 in a traditional IRA or a 401k or any pre-tax account, and if you can properly use your gap years between retirement and RMD age, then what we see is that you can usually save a few $100,000 in lifetime tax liability. And if you have a tax deferred account that's over $1 million, maybe 1.7 like Charlie and Lucy, or 2 million or whatever amount it might be, then you can usually save into the millions of dollars in lifetime tax liability. Not to mention that you're also going to save in IRMAA or Medicare premiums, because that's going to be determined by your AGI. Okay, and for this sample, this is actually from a real life couple that we work with, but of course I've changed the names and the numbers and the dates a little bit to Charlie and Lucy Brown again. We'll just go back to them, and this is what we're looking at here. This is the high-level software that we use to look at over decades. But basically, we're just going to keep it simple. Yeah, this particular couple, they did some annual charitable giving, and they wanted us to put some travel money in there too. But we don't really need that because we're just using this scenario here to just show you what we can possibly save over their retirement. But we did put in their retirement expenses, and then of course their ages, 65 and 62. They're planning on spending about $7,000 a month in retirement. And that's pretty typical. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. It's a little bit different. But let's break down their blueprint here. So we have Charlie and Lucy, 65, 30, and 63. And as you can see, they saved up a decent chunk, a nice little nest egg for retirement. Charlie's got a decent 401k and then a Roth, and then they have some joint assets. And then Lucy has a pre-tax IRA as well, and then also a Roth. So they are sitting on quite a bit of what we call a tax bond because they have a large tax deferred account, right? And let's just take a look at that in the dashboard. So yeah, as you can see here, this just breaks it down further. Almost 81% of their assets are tax deferred. So somewhere between 0 and 40% or 37%, since that's our top income tax bracket right now, is going to go to Uncle Sam. So using Roth conversions over time, this is what we want to do. We want to make sure that we are getting rid of that tax bomb and mitigating our lifetime tax liability. Okay, so now this is the software that shows us what if we were to fill up certain brackets in retirement for Lucy and Charlie Brown. And as you can see here, I have already kind of fooled around with it, but if we take this back to 0, and what this means is we're filling up each one of these brackets to see what it'll do over time. So right here, we're at 0. And then let's say I bump it up and say, hey, you know what? We want to fill up the 12% bracket. And it says 15 because it's at the end of 2025, our current tax rates are supposed to sunset and go back to 15%. So that's why it's like that. But it's saying, what if we filled up the 12% bracket for a couple years, and then after that, we fill up the 15? Well, now it's saying, okay, well, if we do that, this is this green part here, that's going to show the Roth conversions. This is saying without conversion, this is saying with. And so as you can see, it's dropped it a little bit. But it's saved over our lifetime, over Charlie and Lucy's lifetime, it's saved them about $355,000 in taxes, right? Just converting up to that bracket. Now let's go a little bit higher. Let's say we fill up the 25% bracket. Now this green part here is all the conversions. And as you can see, the tax rate comes down later, it's lower, right? And that's going to make a difference because of what I mentioned with our Medicare Parts B and D premium. That's going to be based on our adjusted gross income. And if we have really high RMDs, well, that's going to spike that as well. And also you're going to be in a tax rate. You're probably going to pay a higher tax rate than was absolutely necessary. But obviously right here, as you can see, we're saving over $1 million in taxes now by doing this over a 30-year retirement. It ran the ages out to age 90. and we set up the growth rate to be about between 7 and 8%. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think maybe 7.6%. But anyway, it does show growth over time, but not super aggressive and not super conservative. So as you can see here, if we fill up the 22% bracket and the 25% bracket, we're going to save quite a bit in taxes over time. Now, what if we say, okay, well, what if we want to fill up the 24 and then the 28% bracket? Well, we're still saving a decent chunk, but not quite as much as we would have saved with the 22% bracket. And this is where we want to thread the needle, because what this software is showing, okay, we can max out. It's saying we fill up the whole 22% bracket or the whole 24% bracket, but we don't have to do that. We can go up to the 22% bracket and say, hey, you know what? 24% bracket is only 2 more points. It's a big bracket, but we don't need to necessarily max that out. But if we do, then it's going to bring this tax rate down right here, because what we want to pay attention to later is our Medicare. So is our Medicare tax bracket or our Medicare thresholds, because we want to pay attention to our tax rates and what we're going to pay. And then we want to pay attention to our Medicare Parts B and D premium, right? Because down the road, if we don't do anything, we might be paying an extra $10,000, $12,000 a year in Parts B and D premium. And this is what people usually don't realize when they have to start paying RMDs, is it's going to affect their Parts B and D as well. Not to mention being in a higher tax rate than it was absolutely necessary. Okay, so what we can also look at now is say, okay, look, we've got all this money that we've moved into tax-free account. We can look at what are our total taxes going to be paid? Well, total taxes over here, if we do nothing, are going to be about $2.4 million. And if we do Roth conversions and fill up that somewhere between the 22 and the 24% bracket, well, we're potentially going to save about $1.4 million in taxes. And then it's also going to give recommendations on how much to convert. See these recommendations here, but see, again, as I was saying, we don't need to go all the way up to $328,000, because what this is doing is saying, hey, we have to max out that 24% bracket. But in reality, we don't. But this software is showing us that, yes, it's advantageous for you to still do that. But what we're going to do, and I'm just to give you a little bit better visual of lifetime tax savings. So if we do Roth conversions filling up that bracket, we're going to save about $1.5 million in taxes over a lifetime. And as you can see, if we do nothing, this is what our tax situation is going to look like. And right here, we're going to start having to pay Medicare premiums, right? Parts B and D premium, because our RMDs are going to be high. It's going to kick our income up. Our income thresholds are going to break over that. But if we do this here, we might have at the beginning of the plan, we might pay a little bit higher in Parts B and D premium, but then by the time RMDs kick in, or by F75, we'll have taken enough out of the tax deferred account that it's dropped way back down here, and then we don't have to worry about affecting Parts B and D premium going into the future. Okay, so now that we have a high-level view of what Roth conversions can do to help mitigate lifetime tax liability, as I mentioned here, I'm going to go into the next software, which is a down in the weeds, year-to-year, line-by-line breakdown of what we do and how we go about threading the needle to make sure that we're maximizing what we're doing for it. So again, here's Charlie and Lucy. This is a scenario line-by-line. This tax return is from 2021. Obviously, it's a couple years old, but the principles are all the same. But I built a hypothetical scenario for this year. And again, it's line-by-line. It just shows everything line-by-line all the way down. Total incomes, tax amounts. This is a great down the weeds software. So what I said was, okay, well, he's got the pension, we've got Social Security, we're going to have some qualified dividends and some capital gains and so on and so forth. But let's say, hey, look, we don't need to do the $300,000 Roth conversion that the other software was recommending, but we can do a little bit more than just filling up the 22% bracket. So I said, what if we do $190,000 Roth conversion? And you'll see why I picked that amount, because obviously I've already fooled with the numbers a bit here. Let's say we do that. Well, this is the hypothetical tax report for their pension income, their Social Security, with $190,000 conversion. So as you can see, the total income is still over $300,000. Their average tax rate is 17, even though they're in the 24% bracket. So not bad considering they're over $300,000 of adjusted gross income. And as you can see here, the marginal tax bracket, so we could go all the way up to $383,000 in the 24% bracket. But we've gone about, $76,000 or so over the 22% bracket. And we can do that again because we're threading the needle. But we don't really necessarily want to max this out because of what's going on down here in your Medicare Parts B and D premium. So as you can see, I had initially done a $200,000 conversion. Well, that bumped us over the Parts B and D threshold that goes up to $322,000. It took us into the next one. But we don't need to do that because we're going to be able to thread that needle, filling up more than 22% tax bracket, but not quite as much as the 24. So we're going to say, okay, well, we know somewhere between 22 and 24% in Roth conversions is the sweet spot for this couple, for Lucy and Charlie. But we also know, hey, we don't need to max that out. So we're going to use this software to say, hey, look, what if we do $190,000 for the next 5, 10 years or so on, rather than $100,000 each year? That way, and we don't need to do $300,000. But it's always different for everybody. So threading that needle is what we want to do, is make sure that we're actually getting more savings and lifetime tax liability than you could have if you just filled out a certain bracket. You just, hardcore right to that bracket to the dime, right? Which is super hard to do anyway. But that's why we have this. And usually if we have good inputs, we can get pretty accurate with this information. And here is just another visual. Basically, it's that same tax report put to a visual like this. And the 0 would be where the income is actually at for this hypothetical situation. It's just the way the software works. It says, okay, well, you're actually starting at 0 because it's saying, what if you were to do something else? This is what's going to happen. So as you can see here, we're a 10% bracket. Their Social Security is going to be taxed. It's stacked on top of their ordinary income. Then we have nothing for a bit. And then they have some capital gains and qualified dividends. They're going to get taxed at the preferred rates, which also stacks on top. It's just, that's what that red area, that's what that red area is right there. And then as you can see, we're in the 22% bracket, and then we bump up into the 24% bracket, which I could go all the way up to right here, right? Up to the 32% bracket and fill that up if I want. So we could add another 100,000. But we want to also be cognizant of these dotted lines, which are the Medicare Parts B and D annual increases. And as you can see, I've got this hard line is where we're at, but we're leaving a little bit of a buffer, because if we go over those Parts B and D premium thresholds by $1, we're going to end up paying a couple $1,000s more in Parts B and D premium. So we want to leave a decent buffer for that one. And that's what I've done here, is I've run it right up to that line. This is just a high-level view of one way that we help to mitigate lifetime tax liabilities. And of course, people a lot of times say, hey, Tim, how can Roth conversions work for me? Well, this is a real scenario of how Charlie and Lucy Brown are going to save over $1 million in taxes over their lifetime just by doing Roth conversions. And this says nothing to the legacy assets that it's also going to save when your heirs or legacy inherit the money. We're also going to be able to help them mitigate their lifetime tax liability as well by doing Roth conversions and making sure they're not going to be inheriting a tax bomb from you, because they're going to have to pay income tax rates at their rates, not your rates, which are probably lower in retirement. So thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next video. Once again, Tim Dorman here, founder of Eagle Ridge Wealth Advisors. And if you would like to see how we help our clients get the most out of their financial lives in retirement, please visit us at erwealth.com, and we hope to see you there.